Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Thursday, March 12th, 2026. High velocity transcortical lead therapy. It was said in the refugee camps in Thailand that the Hmong people in America could not find work, were forbidden to practice their religion, and were robbed and beaten by gangs. It was also said that Hmong women were forced into slavery, forced to have sex with American men, and forced to have sex with animals. Dinosaurs lived in America, as well as ghosts, ogres, and giants. With all this to worry about, why did the 15,000 Hmong who gathered in the Ban Vinakai soccer field to voice their deepest fears about life in the United States choose to fixate on doctors? A year after I read the account of that gathering, as I was attempting to deal out of teetering pile of notes, clippings, and photocopied pages from books and dissertations into several drawfuls of file folders, I had a glimmering of insight. There were hundreds of pages whose proper home I was at a loss to determine. Should they go in the medicine folder, the mental health folder, the animism folder, the shamanism folder, the social structure folder, the body-mind-soul continuum folder? I hovered uncertainly, pages in hand, and I realized I was suspended in a large bowl of fish soup. Medicine was religion. Religion was society. Society was medicine. Even economics were mixed up in there somewhere, where you had to have or borrow enough money to buy a pig or even a cow in case someone got sick and a sacrifice was required. And so was music. If you didn't have a geesh player at your funeral, your soul wouldn't be guided on its posthumous travels, and it couldn't be reborn, and it might make your relative sick. In fact, the Hmong view of healthcare seemed to me to be precisely the opposite of the prevailing American one, in which the practice of medicine was fissioned into smaller and smaller subspecialties, with less and less truck between bailiwicks. The Hmong carried holism to its ultima thule. As my web of cross-references grew more and more thickly interlaced, I concluded that the Hmong preoccupation with medical issues was nothing less than a preoccupation with life and death. And life after death. Not realizing that when a man named Yong or Lee or Moka walked in the family practice center with a stomach ache, he was actually complaining that the entire universe was out of balance. The young doctors of Merced frequently failed to satisfy their Hmong patients. How could they succeed? They could hardly be expected, as Dwight Conquergood had done at Ban Vinai, to launch a parade of tigers and dabs through the corridors of MCMC. They could hardly be expected to respect their patient system of health beliefs, if indeed they ever had the time and interpreters to find out what it was. Since the medical schools they had attended had never informed them that the diseases are caused by fugitive souls and cured by jugulated chickens. All of them had spent hundreds of hours dissecting cadavers and could distinguish at a glance between the ligament of Hasselbalch and the ligament of Treitz. None of them had a single hour of instruction in cross-cultural medicine. To most of them, the Hmong taboos against blood tests, spinal tap surgery, anesthesia, and autopsies, the basic tool of modern medicine, seemed like a self-defeating ignorance. They had no way of knowing that a Hmong might regard those taboos as the sacred guardians of his identity. Indeed, quite literally of his very soul. When the doctors viewed as clinical efficiency, the Hmong viewed as frosty arrogance. And no matter what the doctors did, even if it never trespassed on taboo territory, the Hmong, frightened as they were with negative expectations, accumulated before they came to America, inevitably interpreted in the worst possible light. Whenever I talked to Hmong people in Merced, I asked them what they thought of the medical care they and their friends had received. The doctors at MCMC are young and new. They do what they want to do. Doctor wants to look inside the woman's body. The woman, very pain, very hurt, but the doctor just wants to practice on her. One lady, she is cry. She do not want doctor to see her body. But this country, there is the rule. If you want to stay here, you must let doctors examine the body. Most old people prefer not to go to the doctor. They feel maybe doctor just wants to study me, not my problems. They scary this if they go one time, if they not follow appointment and do like doctor want, doctor get mad. Doctors like earth and sky. He think you are a refugee, you know nothing. It took us an hour to see the doctor. Other people who are rich, they treat them really well and they do not wait. This lady, she had some blisters inside the mouth. And the doctor, he said, you need surgical treatment. She said, no. I just need medication for pain only. And he said, I know more than you do. He completely ignored what she asked. My half-brother, his body was swollen and itchy. And the doctors say, hey, you got a cancer and we need to operate. He agreed to sign the operation, but he didn't want to do it. But he said to me, I already signed everything and the doctor going to send me to jail if I change my mind. Hmong should never sign anything at MCMC. The student doctors just want to experiment on the poor people, and they kill the poor people. The doctor is very busy. He takes people that are sick. He produces people that are healthy. If he do not produce, his economic will be deficit. But the Hmong, he will want the doctor to calmly explain and comfort him. That does not happen. I do not blame the doctor. It is a system in America. All the people quoted here speak English, and thus belong in the most educated and most Americanized segment of Hmong society in Merced. The segment most likely to understand the value of Western medical care. Nonetheless, their version of reality fails to match that of their doctors, pretty much across the board. From the doctor's point of view, the facts are as follows. MCMC is indeed a teaching hospital, but this works to its patients' advantages since it has attracted skilled faculty members who must constantly update their knowledge and techniques. The young residents are all MDs, not students. The Hmong spend a long time in the waiting area, but so does everyone else. Patients who change their mind about surgery do not go to jail. The doctors do not experiment on their patients, neither do they kill them. Though their patients do sometimes die, and they are more likely to do so if the Hmong, they view the hospital as a dreaded last resort to be hazardous, only when all else fails. Jessica Santillan and Duke, what we learned. The death of 17-year-old Jessica Santillan after she mistakenly received incompatible organs during transplant. Surgery has provoked grief, concern, and reflection. Across America, and particularly Duke University Hospital, where her surgery took place. Duke's actions in the wake of this tragic error have been commented on broadly in the national and local media. And I'd like to address my perspective. Our medical center deals effectively with highly complex medical situations daily. This is what we do, and we are prepared to handle even the most difficult problems, the issues. Surrounding Jessica Santillan were unlike anything we've ever experienced as individuals or as an institution. In just a few days, her case forced Duke to grapple with some of the most troubling questions that face today's hospitals and physicians. Medical questions about mistakes in care and how to prevent them, ethical questions about organ transplantation, and end-of-life issues. And communication questions about balancing a patient's right to privacy, the needs of the family, and the public's right to know. We at Duke tried to find the right answers to these questions. In most instances, I believe we were successful. But there are also things that we wish we had done better. But I am certain that every step of the way, we at Duke were completely honest with Jessica's family, and I know we provided her the best available care under the most trying of circumstances. For any hospital physician, these are the crucial obligations, and I am confident we fulfilled our medical responsibilities and did all we could to save Jessica's life. As much of America knows, Jessica received a heart-lung transplant at Duke on February 7th because of a misunderstanding between her surgeon Dr. Jim Jaggers, and the organ transplant coordinate agency that provided the heart and lungs. Dr. Jaggers did not learn until surgery was nearly complete that the organs came from a different donor with a different blood type than Jessica. Immediately after surgery, Dr. Jaggers and Duke took several key actions. Jessica's family was notified immediately by Dr. Jaggers that an error had occurred. He explained in detail what had happened, enabling them to make informed decisions about her care. Duke offered all of its medical resources to treat Jessica. We hope that we have learned will contribute to the development of new national guidelines that will prevent such a mistake from happening anywhere. Immediately after surgery, Duke contacted the United Network of Organ Sharing, the nationwide medical network that identifies transplantable organs, notifying them that Jessica was in critical need of another transplant. Remarkably, new organs were identified in 13 days. She received a second transplant on February 20th. For a short period immediately after the second operation, her new organs functioned well, but her overall condition continued to deteriorate, and she died February 22nd. One of the sad facts of organ transplantation is that there are simply not enough organs available to save everyone who needs a transplant, because too few Americans become organ donors. 17 people die every day waiting for transplants that never happen. The combination of the scarcity and the initial mistake in Jessica's case presented Duke with a medical situation that few hospitals or physicians have faced. Consequently, some have charged that Duke should have done more to save Jessica, and at the same time others have suggested that Duke did too much. Some have asked why didn't Duke announce the blood typing mistake immediately after the first transplant and launch a public appeal for compatible organs. One reason is that Jessica's family initially asked us not to. Another reason is that it would not have been appropriate for us to initiate publicity. The organ procurement system used by all hospitals are designed to allocate organs on a fair and equitable basis while considering the degree of need. It's inappropriate for Duke to publicly solicit organs for specific patients, as this would be unfair to others awaiting organs as well. It cannot be overlooked that it was a system that ultimately identified the second set of organs for Jessica. During the week following the first transplant, Duke cooperated with Jessica's family, acknowledging in 4 separate news reports that Jessica was rejecting her organs but respecting the family's wish not to say more. Around February 14th, the family's representative disclosed the organ mismatch to the news media. The information was first reported by a local television station on the evening of the 14th. And appeared prominently on a local newspaper as a page 1 story on Sunday, February 16th. And on Monday, February 17th, Duke acknowledged publicly what had happened. Others have said that Duke should not have provided a second transplant to Jessica, suggesting that the second set of organs should have gone to another patient whose odds of survival might have been better. To this, we say that after the blood typing mistake, we treat Jessica just as we would have treated any other gravely ill transplant patients. She underwent the appropriate medical tests and determined she was eligible for and would benefit from another transplant. When Duke notified the Unos that Jessica needed a second transplant, her critical condition placed her high on the list. Unos has confirmed publicly that Jessica was eligible for a second transplant. And the second set of organs became available through customary Unos procedures, not because of publicity. Other questions have been raised about the circumstances surrounding Jessica's death on February 22nd. Some have asked why, before Jessica was declared dead, some have asked why other doctors were not brought in to provide a second opinion. Before Jessica was declared dead, in fact, the second pediatric neurologist from Duke was brought in to confirm death. And medical standards for brain dead are clear. If a patient is in a deep coma, a decision about whether to maintain life might require difficult medical judgments. But Jessica was not in a coma. Multiple tests had determined that her brain would never sustain life again. We understand that it is extremely difficult for family and friends to accept the loss of a loved one. But the medical outcome was not a matter of interpretation. Duke doctors pronounced Jessica dead after a battery of medical tests conclusively determined that her brain had completely ceased to function. The same doctors gave Jessica's family an opportunity to pay their last respects by continuing the use of a ventilator that kept her breathing for 4 hours after she was declared dead. At about 5 p.m. on February 22nd, the administration of medications was stopped when the priest who had conducted prayers with the family at the bedside and administered last rites advised the medical team that it was time to cease medication based on the family's wishes. The medications were discontinued. And Jessica's heart stopped beating at 5:07 p.m. At which time the ventilator was turned off. Children in a pediatric ICU unit are very sick, and we must have strict rules not to guard against infection, but also to protect their confidentiality. Our medical staff needs to be able to focus on their patients without unnecessary distractions. Each patient is allowed no more than 2 visitors at a time. No one except the immediate family is allowed to photograph a patient. And no one is allowed to publish photographs of our medical team without their permission, or rules of most hospitals. It's true that once we asked a visitor to leave Jessica's bedside because more than 2 people were in the room, we did not ask somebody to photograph Jessica. But when her parents photographed her and made those photographs available to the news media, we did not object. We did ask, however, that unauthorized photos that include faces of our staff be removed from a website. However, at no time did anyone at Duke exert pressure on Jessica's family because of anything they want to say or said about her situation. While we sympathize with the stress and grief caused by Jessica's sickness and loss, any suggestion that anyone at Duke did exert such pressure is incorrect. Finally, some have accused Duke of acting too slowly to provide the public with information about Jessica's case. Once the blood type error was disclosed, when we treat patients, our foremost concern is to them, And we must protect their privacy, not making public the details of their case. None of us will ever forget the profound sense of loss with the death of Jessica, and none of us wants to relive an outcome such as occurred here. We are committed to providing our patients with the very best available medical care with compassion. We are committed to learning from this event, improving the system, and sharing that information with others. And we're committed to learning to earning the continued trust of our patients. Jessica's memory compels us to accept nothing less.